and welcome to the latest in these bedside briefings on business. Very difficult to say when it's midnight, but we've had a hard day in the office, hard day in the factory, and what's happened? We haven't made the figures for the month, the bank's not been very helpful, so where do we go from here? This year we're looking at one of the worst trading years on record, so the only thing we can do is to make sure that if we're not making it on the top line, we're going to make it on the bottom line, which basically means we've got to cut the overhead. So first of all, what we do, we look at every order, every standing order, every contract we've placed. We look at whether we really need all the telecommunications equipment we've got, possibly cut back on telephone lines if you're not using them, and also have a look at the sales force, see how they're doing. Are they actually pulling their weight, or, well, they'll be finding it tough. Perhaps they need motivation, and would you believe that means spending a little bit of money, take them away for a weekend somewhere and really see who can actually restructure all the targets, all the sales briefings and everything else. And then have a look at your customers. A lot of those customers, do they owe you money? Now, it might be that you've had a relationship with the customer for many, many years, and so you've got informal terms of credit, informal terms of trade. But basically, if your terms say 28 days, then 28 days it is. But in reality, most business goes to 90 days, and the bigger the firm, the worse they are. So really consider, do you need these contracts? Do you need to supply these big people if they're not going to pay you? Because at the end of the day, you still have to pay your staff. Banks. Now what can we say about banks? They're not going to lend you money. And you have to realise that an overdraft is what it says. It's an overdraft. It is not a firmed up financial instrument. They can take the money back any time they like, and they will. They'll also look at your particular trading pattern, and remember, it's not the friendly bank manager anymore. It's somebody way down the line, probably at a regional centre, probably with the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, so they might not have a job at the end of the week. So any banking relationships in the current climate are just simply rubbish. So refinancing, think of factoring your invoices. Now, factoring an invoice means that you do get the money back very, very quickly. You give a percentage to the factoring company. However, if you're not going to get the money anyway, it's costing you in bank charges, so that is a possible way forward. And it could well be, if you've got plenty of invoices out there which are approved, you won't need the additional credit or the overdraft. So therefore factoring then suddenly seems to be a very cheap form of finance. Shareholders. Well, you have a problem with shareholders at the moment, simply because they're not getting dividends, and they're going to have to live with that. So do watch, because there'll be people out there that might decide that if you're a public company, fine, we'll just go on a buying spree, buy up these very cheap shares, and suddenly you've got new owners. Warehouse stocks. What do you do about warehouse stocks? You're overstocked. Sell, sell, sell. Get rid of it. Convert it into cash. Don't care what you do with it. Clear the warehouse. Possibly cut down on warehouse staff if you've actually cleared it. You don't need to hold stock in the current climate. Think along the lines of just in time. JIT. Everybody's been doing it, and so the people that have actually got it, well, that's probably worked well for them in the current climate. Good example, the car industry. They have a back catalogue. They've got cars piling up in Southampton. Go down Southampton docks. You cannot park your car if you're going on a cruise ship, because quite simply they've got all the cars waiting for export there, or they've been imported and nobody wants them. They're just sitting there. So the new car you buy this year is probably 2 years old. Slight exaggeration, but you check the rust underneath, because it's been sitting right next to the sea for a long while. And politically, where are we at? Business has a very, very rough relationship with this Labour government. Unfortunately, they don't know what they're doing. They're running around like headless chickens. If I was to follow any political pundits, well, I wouldn't bother. In fact, I'd actually follow Jeff Randall and Robert Peston. Now, Robert Peston, the BBC's political editor, has come in for an awful lot of stick but he did actually point out the troubles at Northern Rock years ago. And okay, he wasn't really forthright in condemning Northern Rock, but he basically said he wouldn't touch them with a barge pole at one point. He did analyse the business model and worked out there was no way they could be making money. Jeff Randall and I go back a long, long way. I represent an airline, British Island Airways, and I thought Randall had given my client a very hard time over new routes they were putting in. So I went to see him, and together we rewrote the story for the Sunday Telegraph. And I'll be eternally grateful because it actually saved my client and didn't make him look so much of a wally. Unfortunately, the little airline actually got squeezed out and actually went bust a few years later. But it was interesting, and that got me into the whole aviation thing. So from British Island Airways I also worked for Alitalia, and I've taken a keen interest in aviation ever since. In fact, at one time I actually had airside passes for both Gatwick and Heathrow, and I just had to remember which pass to put on all the time. In fact, some days I just put both passes on, which totally confused everybody. But the point is, aviation is an area which, if I was in the aviation business now, I'd be very, very worried. A bit like the shipping business, because there is surplus capacity everywhere. You'll find that over the next few months there are going to be perfectly serviceable aircraft being parked in Death Valley, and they're going to be mothballed because capacity has to be reduced. And if you're going on holiday this year, be prepared, because your cruise ships, so even if you pick up a cruise ship from Southampton, you'll be paying in dollars. So suddenly your pint of beer, which used to be at pub prices last year, will suddenly be at all round about £6 or £7 for a pint. So that is what you have to consider. So those are a few things to be getting on with. We'll have some more of these late night chats in this series, so let's see what happens. Anyway, thank you. If you have been listening, thank you very much. If you need any further information, my contact details are on the station, so please send me your emails, send me your queries, and let's see if we can bust this recession too.